You can call me Dr. Hart. I am a researcher in my soul, a scientist. That may not be entirely accurate in the eyes of the law or other professionals, but it is the truth. I've been rejected from many facilities and campuses, but that is no fault of my own. I wanted to learn, yet they made me teach myself. I wished to study as much as I could to help the world. I wished to discover the true potential of man and to aid future generations in unlocking said potential. Along with those wishes came the realization that to discover such potential I'd also need to delve into human fault. To reveal extreme heights you must go to extreme depths. One experiment in particular yielded astounding results. Where does the line between faith and loyalty lie? How does love compare to faith, and which is stronger? Which will break the other first? I've found that faith seems to be one of the greatest human faults. My peers abjectly refuse to listen to my findings. They shun me, which is what has brought me here. Doesn't the world deserve to know that simple misplaced belief can be their greatest downfall? As a scientific mind, it is almost expected that I would disregard matters of faith, but that is not what the experiment intended to do. Quite the opposite, in fact. I wanted to simulate a deity to believe in. If a false deity could lead you astray from your morals, then what does that say about the true entities which humanity relies upon? My apologies for the informality of this message. I merely want to display my findings in a manner simple enough to be understood by any who may stumble across it. Here is what I have learned. Hypothesis: if faith can lead a human to go against natural morals and the laws of civilization, then it is quite obviously a fault. I've not been formally taught at all in my life, but I understand a great deal of things. I understand that on a forum such as this I should relay my findings as though telling a story rather than a report. I understand that you may not approve of my methods, but I also know that it will be easier for you to understand what I have done by displaying it in this format. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, I can explain my experiment. I needed two identical subjects. Each one would be put in identical circumstances. The difference between the two was the options they were given to escape captivity. One would be guided by faith, and one by love and loyalty. At the conclusion of the experiment, the two would collide, and one would come out as the stronger power. Which guidance do you believe was stronger? I began by selecting my subjects. Two males in their early 20s, twin brothers who lived under the roof of their parents. Christopher and Adam Taylor were excellent specimens. Active, average intelligence, and like-minded in their core values and beliefs. They had been raised as Roman Catholic, but only through the family's occasional Sunday service attendance. Neither of the boys had incredibly strong views on religion, but they had the base belief that they were raised in. They seemed to love each other dearly and were each other's closest friend. A few hired hands were key in helping me to intercept a pizza delivery to the Taylor family. When the entire family had fallen into medicated slumber, my employees knew their next task: capture and contain. The Taylor family woke up missing two members, and my experiment had commenced. The boys were placed into pre-made rooms while they slept, and I watched through well-hidden cameras. They both panicked as expected when they awoke in a place foreign to them. For several days they were left in those rooms, with only the food delivery through a slot in the door as a way to tell how much time had passed. I kept them well fed, the rooms were comfortable, and each young man reacted the same. Wary, confused, but only minimally afraid. After several days it was time to sow the seeds of guidance. I began with Christopher, as he would be the more challenging subject. The setup was simple. Conveniently placed speakers would give the illusion of an otherworldly voice resounding through the room. He was chosen for this role based on my observations before his containment. At times he had turned to prayer when upset, only to later be disappointed in the lack of answers. It wasn't often that he turned his ear to the heavens, but it was more than his brother. I waited for an opportune moment, a moment where the young Christopher was looking for answers from above. It had been nearly a week since the boys were put in containment, and at this point they were beginning to show signs of fear, paranoia, and anger. Both of them had searched their rooms high and low for a way out, and it seemed that they were getting low on morale. Christopher was in bed staring at the ceiling, obvious tears pooled against his eyelashes. "Please, please God, don't let me die here. I can guide you to salvation, my son." He leapt from his bed as the sound echoed through the room. He searched around, likely looking for the source of the voice. When his search turned up no results, he looked to the sky. "Gee God?" He stumbled over the single-worded question, seemingly doubting the shred of faith he held within. That day planted the seed inside him, and after a few days it was clear that he was holding on to hope that the voice was his Lord. It took nearly 2 more weeks for Christopher to have a solid belief that my voice was God speaking to him. After that, I had him perform small tasks to honor his Savior, and he followed orders like the most obedient little sheep. During this time, I spoke into Adam's room as well, though he received far different messages. I told Adam that his brother believed me to be God, and that he was acting odd because of it. I also explained to Adam that if he merely waited, I would offer him the chance to save his brother and leave in peace. He agreed to be patient, though he really didn't have any other option. After several months in captivity, it was time to see what happened when the loyal and the faithful went head to head. I had convinced Christopher of many things at that point, and he seemed excited to save his brother. Adam was more closed off with his emotions, but still he seemed anxious to finally have a chance to be free. I hit the switch that disengages the locks on the bedroom doors and watched as each young man left their room. Outside the bedroom was a small hallway that led only to one other room. Watching the monitors was like seeing a mirror image. Each walked down the short hall and opened the door, and nearly simultaneously they stepped into the center room. There was a moment of what I assumed was surprise as the brothers stared at each other from across the room. Adam ran first, embracing his brother and speaking through tears. "It's okay, Chris. I'm going to help you. I know you're sick. I'll get us out of here." Adam's voice was cut short as the embrace turned into a chokehold. Christopher had his arms wrapped tightly around his brother's neck. Within moments, Christopher had used their weight to bring them both to the ground, and he gave his brother a pitiful look while he held him down. "God told me I can save you." Christopher sounded on the verge of laughter. "I'll save you." Adam looked afraid, and he was struggling against the force that kept his back on the floor. "You're crazy, man. That's not real." In that moment, it seemed that the room froze, and there was a visible change in Christopher. His gaze turned cold, and when he spoke, it was in a monotone. "God told me you lost your faith, but I can save you." He brought his face close to his brother's and whispered, "I know how to purge your body of sin." The frozen moment ended after that whisper. I watched in fascination as Christopher attempted to save his twin. It only took a split second for his teeth to sink into Adam's throat. It took much longer for him to use his teeth to tear the flesh from bone. He left none remaining. Perhaps the longest part of this was how long it took him to consume all that flesh. By the next morning, only bone remained of Adam. Christopher cried when he had finished his task. "You're safe, Adam. I took all your sin away." He sat there for a while before I intervened. He was a disaster. His faith had made a savage of him. "What will you do now, Christopher?" I asked through the loudspeaker. I have to save the rest of my family. I have to save everyone. I'm not sure what answer I was expecting, but that one satisfied me. I disengaged the locks to that room, and after several minutes, Christopher went to the one door that neither twin had touched. It led outside, and he went off to save more people. Faith was stronger than love and loyalty, stronger than blood and family. It won the fight with ease. There wasn't even a moment where Christopher wavered. He cared for nothing except what his faith told him to. This experiment brought interesting insight, and I hope to be able to recreate it in the future with female subjects. I've always loved parrots. I like the way they express themselves. Parrots can't sing, dance, nod, and talk, and they're crazy smart. Parrots can recognize people, identify colors, and recall up to 1,000 words. After graduation university and getting a steady income and my own apartment, I decided to adopt my first parrot. Adopting was important to me because so many parrots are without homes after people decide owning a parrot isn't for them. The thing that made me decide to adopt a parrot was a bad breakup with girlfriend. I needed the company, and finally I didn't have to run my decisions by another person. It just so happened that our local RSPCA Animal Rescue Center had just posted about a stray parrot. The African gray had been with the shelter for 6 weeks before I adopted him. The volunteer at the shelter explained that he had turned up in a derelict car park in a Manchester suburb and was captured by a construction worker who, whilst eating lunch, had found the parrot calling hey and approaching colleagues. He was tempted into a cat carrier with some kiwi from his lunchbox, brought him to the shelter. That's how he got his name, Kiwi. Without a ring on his leg, chip, or any responses to adverts for a missing African gray, he had nowhere to return to, and so I was more than happy to give Kiwi a new home. I know they are horrible pets for most people. They scream, can live up to 80 years, and can act mischievously and chew on things they shouldn't, just like a toddler. But I figured, what's the worst that could happen? He needed a home and I needed a friend. For the first 2 days, Kiwi did not leave his cage once. He didn't speak much either. He was obviously reserved and would need time to adjust. I'd read about this prior to rehoming him. Parrots are intelligent and sensitive. It made sense he'd need time to adjust. To make his adjustment easier, I bought him toys and I let him eat lots of his favorite treats. After a week, Kiwi was comfortable enough to climb out of his cage to get fruit or fly over to me whilst I was working. And then one day, he starts vocalizing. For a parrot like an African gray, they tend to pick up on all sorts of sounds around them. People report their grays copying sounds like car alarms or microwave beeps. He began by saying hello bozo each time I opened his cage in the morning. Then it was each time I entered the room. Next he began whistling when I turned on the TV. I can't describe to you exactly how the tune goes, but it's simple and melancholy like a traditional folk song or lullaby. It was cute most of the time, but it quickly got old. By the following week, Kiwi's daily vocabulary was much larger. Like peeling off layers of an onion, Kiwi began revealing each his favorite terms and phrases he'd learned over the years. Some were typical, like wolf whistles and kissing sounds, which somehow every parrot I've met has somehow picked up. I taught him some new phrases too. One particularly funny phrase he'd learned was get to the chopper. Some were a little more obscure. I didn't pay much attention when Kiwi first screamed out help. Hell, I just figured one of my dumb friends thought it would be funny to teach him it. That, or he'd heard it whilst I was binging horror movies, which I've been doing a lot since the breakup. I sort of expect him to pick up some nasty words and phrases. Something I didn't expect, though, was what happened next. It had been 3 weeks since Kiwi arrived in my home when he started repeating the numbers. It was 11 numbers he'd repeat in the same order each time. At first I shrugged it off. He said weirder things. Perhaps he'd seen an episode of Countdown and liked the number round. To be honest, Kiwi had repeated the numbers so many times in succession I wasn't even aware how the number started or ended. But after a couple of days of him calling out numbers, I made a note on my phone. It wasn't until I was entering my phone number for a food delivery that I realized Kiwi was reciting a phone number. 11 digits beginning with 07. That's a UK mobile phone number. It seemed strange that he would know a mobile number. The TV adverts all started with 0800 or another business line. I tried Googling the number to no avail. Perhaps, I figured, they taught Kiwi a number that could be called if he got lost. Now, I would hate to deprive somebody of their family pet, so I decided to try the number. The number rang 6 times and then disconnected without a voicemail to leave a message. Before I could call a second time, my phone began ringing. It was an unknown number. Now, I don't usually pick up unknown numbers, but something told me that this was connected to the number I just tried to contact. I was right. My name is Marcus. This happened around 3 years ago. I was 15 at the time. I lived in a small town in Montana. It was a mountainous area of the state, and I only had a few friends that I could regularly hang out with because I lived an hour away from my school. One day my parents were going on a trip together, so they left my oldest brother with me to take care of me. But of course my brother just entering college, he was a party animal, like most young college idiots. The day came when my parents left. I basically did what I did every single day. Went on Reddit, found a ton of creepy stuff. I always loved the dark and creepy side of the internet. It was 7 p.m. just after my parents left, so he wasn't supposed to leave me alone because if something happened no one would know because we live in such a secluded area. But he left while I was on Reddit and I had no idea. I went downstairs to ask my brother if we could order pizza. But assumed he had left because his car wasn't in the driveway. I called a few friends and asked if they wanted to come over, and it would take 30 minutes for them to get here, but I was a fairly patient dude. So I just waited in the living room, went on my phone and waited. When they arrived, I opened the door for James and Connor. We went to my room so I could show them a few things I had found. I had found something that we all had an interest in, the dark web. I had never thought about actually going onto it until now. I had a few friends with me. I honestly wasn't scared since I knew what I was doing, and so did my friends. I asked them if they wanted to go on there, and to my surprise, we all agreed and went on. At first it was just your usual drugs, guns, or exotic animals, or the most dumb and idiotic conspiracy theories. Like, the German government is trying to turn us into tigers, that one made us boast into laughter. We went onto a creepy number list and found a ton of food delivery services that were apparently creepy or scary. We were going to order pizza, so we thought, why not order from a shady pizza shop? We used James' phone because his number is a California number, so we thought they wouldn't be able to find us. Guys, every single number is in our state, James pointed out. That sent a slight worry through my body, but I just ignored it. Maybe a coincidence. I carried on. I picked up his phone and dialed the number. It rang and someone picked up. A voice in the phone said, "This is Kenny's Pizza Shop. What can I get you?" I thought to myself, this is stupid. It's just a normal pizza shop. We ordered the pizza, sent our address, and waited. We talked about how normal it was and how it was probably some annoying person on there trying to trick someone. Anyways, we waited for about 30 minutes. Nobody showed up. We were watching videos on internet mysteries and got distracted. Soon enough, 2 hours later, nothing was coming. We shrugged it off. Of course, I was annoyed that I wasted $15 on nothing. I just assumed it was some stupid scam, so I asked my friends if they wanted to just make some ramen or something. And we agreed, went into the kitchen and made ramen. But all of a sudden, a knock at my door. Connor laughed, probably the pizza shop. 2 hours later, I went to the door and opened it. It turned out it was the guy from the pizza shop. He began pleading to me to let him in. I asked him what was wrong. He told me he had no time to explain and they were coming. I let him in and we slammed the door shut. All of a sudden, a car pulled in the driveway and the guy dove onto the floor panicking. But it was just my brother. The guy got up and ran to my room. My brother slammed the door when he walked in. "Where is he?" he said with a stern voice. James and Connor stood back. I pointed to the room and my brother ran into the room and locked the door behind him. We heard a blood-curdling scream and 3 shots fired. Me and my friends ran out of the house and called the cops. We explained as quick as we could and the cops were on their way in 15 minutes. As we hid behind the house, we heard the screams and yells of my brother. My brother was going absolutely insane and I was truly terrified. When the cops arrived, we found out my brother had gutted the man and hung his body parts to the ceiling and had 15 other bodies in his bedroom. My brother killed 16 people, brutally. They also told me my brother had a plan to kill me and my friends as well. He got sentenced to the death penalty, and I never heard from my friends after that. I assume out of fear they abandoned our friendship. I don't blame them. I don't understand how everything happened, how my brother was on the dark web or anything. I don't know why he wanted to kill us or why he killed who he did. And I never want to.